Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks. This is episode 80, I think. Wow, goodness gracious. I'm Irlianna StarSound Astrology, and Happy New Year, everyone. Yay, we made it out of 2020. Oh my God. Yes, we did it. You did it. Yay, we did it together. So today, what I thought I'd do is talk a little bit about just a kind of overall forecast for 2021. And mainly that really has to do with there's a square that's about to start happening between Saturn and Uranus. And that's really kind of like the main event. Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus are going to be like the main players in the storyline for this year, as well of course as the eclipses. Anyway, that's what we're gonna cover today, and power dates of opportunity, as I say, and when I do sessions with people, when we have areas of opportunity and opening which can challenge us but bring us results. So we're going to go through all that and where we might see this in the collective, what that might look like in our society, as well as in our own lives, our own personal transformation. So with that, I have to say that, yes, Katerina was planning to have her on today, but she's very busy with her artwork right now. She's creating these beautiful art that she was to describe and to show. We're going to be posting that. So we have to have her back on another episode when they're ready. She was showing me some of the artwork about this, this kind of cosmic experience that she had with the galaxy, with the Milky Way. This is like a spontaneous, real-time, real-life engagement. She's very, very psychic and mystical. She's a dear friend and sister to me for many, many years. And she, she could write a book. She's got incredible mystical gifts. And so she loves astrology as much as I do. And so she has an experience of it. And so that's what we'll be sharing when she's back. When that art is ready, we got to have it got to have it ready. So yes, we're going to put that aside. But meanwhile, no problem, because here it's 2021, January 1st. And so I'd like to give everybody kind of an overview. So yes, 2020, the year that was. And, I'll just say real quick, 2021 is not going to be anything like we went through. So, right, you can just like rest, relax. Yes, there's always work to do. But the engagement and the dynamic engagement of Saturn and Uranus, a little bit of Jupiter, and Saturn and Uranus are all, it's just in a different frequency now. And it's going to bring around, it's just going to allow things, let's see, how will I say this? Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, change makers. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, change makers. In a good way. And, whenever there is change, there's always the shadow side. So we want to look at both sides. So we know, here's a way of being what ways of being we want to embrace. And then what ways of being we want to watch out for that would not bring us any kind of resolution or productivity or evolution, So we're going to get into all that right now. So, all right, pull up a chair, get your hot cup of tea or cold iced tea. If you're in the Southern hemisphere, get your iced tea out, and in the Northern hemisphere here, get out your warm tea or coffee or whatever it is that you desire. So here we go. Okay. So of course we have it in the United States. We're having the inauguration, on January 20th. And so, it's always on January 20th, 0 degrees of Aquarius, the sun's always at 0. So it always gives us a certain dependable tenor for, with the sun there, the kind of layout that we're always going to have. It's the design is to always engage within a democracy with visionary ideals. That's no matter what party is in office, that's always the general consensus, So that's going to be on January 20th. But the Jupiter and Uranus and Saturn, it's going to be quite a dynamic month, this month of January. So we have a Jupiter and Uranus square, and I'll explain what that is. And then it'll be in January 17th. So right before, it'll be exact, right a few days before the actual inauguration. So what does that mean? Well, Jupiter is the planet of expansion, and it's, you know, doing the right thing, and it's the higher wisdom and occult philosophy and truth, you know, journalism and all of these, you know, broad-minded, you know, I think of like the wisdom of Solomon, you know, and great, you know, in Vedic astrology, Jupiter is known as Guru. The planet is called Guru. And so that the translation of guru is dispeller of darkness. So that's what a guru does for us, right? They are the dispellers of darkness. Of course, we are our own gurus, and if we have an outside guru or teacher, it's a reflection, and it's a way that that person reflects back to us, you know, what we already know, and that to be revealed. So anyway, so Jupiter is is now out of, as we know, it's in Aquarius along with Saturn. It's zippier, a lot zippier than Saturn. It only spends a year in the sign. So Jupiter's going to have a very quick movement through Aquarius this year. Saturn is going to take 2.5 years. It always takes about 2.5. With the retrogrades, it's like 3 years. Jupiter is going to move really fast, though, through Aquarius. Sometimes this happens. It's going to actually dip its toe into Pisces around, I think it's in May. And then it's going to retrograde a little bit back into Aquarius, and it'll move forward again. So in the middle of the year, we'll have a little preview of what that looks like, of Jupiter and Pisces. Now, Jupiter is exalted in Pisces. I mean, it loves Pisces. That's like its home turf, you know. In ancient astrology, Jupiter rules Pisces, so it's very at home there. It's about, you know, Pisces is all about compassion and you know, kindness and compassion and devotion to the divine. So Jupiter there is going to bring a, you know, divine grace. It has enormous opportunity for that. So there is that's going to, we're going to get a little preview, because remember, as I said in previous episodes, whenever a planet enters a sign at 0 degrees, you have that, it gives you a little preview of what the energies are going to bring and the kind of potentialities that can occur, good or and bad, you know, right? Like, you know, life affirming and not. So it's our choice, of course, to know and to make. So anyway, so we'll start with this month. So January 17th, we're going to have the Jupiter is only going to square Uranus the once, because it, you know, it's fast moving, and it's just not going to get back in that exact degree again. Although all 3 planets are going to be squaring each other by sign. So we have Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius, and then Uranus has been trucking along in Taurus since 2018. So those create a T, it's a square, 90 degree, they're at angle, a right angle to each other. So that provides a lot of its conflict and its engagement and its action that needs to be taken. So the Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus all squaring each other, these are all outer planets, and they all move slowly. You know, it's not like Mars and Venus that are, you know, zip along, or Mercury that really zips, because, you know, he's always on caffeine. Ugh, you know, really, half calf, please. Well, when he goes retrograde, that's when he gets off the caffeine, right? But anyway, yeah, these are slow moving planets. So the slow movement, it's where we're being asked to engage is, you know, about Aquarius. It's about our society and how we can evolve and move and think forward and think about progress and enlightenment and self-realization. Those are all very Aquarian concepts. What we want to avoid is like herd mentality. We want to embrace diversity, because there's really unity, not in being all clones. That's really not unity. Aquarian unity is to embrace diversity. So this is what we're being asked to engage in. And so on January 17th, we have Jupiter squaring Uranus. So that will be, you know, that would be, I would say the desire, Uranus and Taurus, of course, has been bringing us, it's asking us to shake free of where we've had, you know, maybe attachment to material wealth and attachment to the world of earthly sensuality and, you know, the mundane grounded world, and instead saying, wait a minute, what if your world were expanded to include higher dimensions of experience, higher dimensions of connection? So new values, you know, an upheaval. Sometimes it can be very chaotic, you know, and with Uranus energy, it's sudden, you know, we don't see changes coming sometimes, or they just happen out of nothing. They happen so fast and they can shift and shift again. You know, it's like a lightning rod kind of energy. So Jupiter squaring Uranus is giving us an opportunity. It's like, okay, we all want change. We all want a better world. And Jupiter can be very zealous and optimistic and confident. And it's like, yeah, you know, let's go for it. And that's great. It's going to give us a lot of hope and encouragement to move forward boldly, you know, like in Star Trek, to boldly go where no man has gone before. You know, it's like the collective is feeling this, you know, throwing off the shackles of the past and saying, you know, we can do this. The world's in dire shape right now with the pandemic and with, you know, global warming and things of that nature, and the environmental damage that's been going on for so many years. And so, but there's this newfound sense of freedom, but also responsibility, and doing the right thing, and, you know, divine grace stepping in and saying, okay, let's get this done, and we have the tools, and we can work together, and we can hold that optimism and hope and confidence. Now, the other side of that would be like recklessness, and maybe, you know, with Jupiter, you know, Jupiter can overdo it. It's like the you know, being a little overzealous and overextending or overpromising. So we want to manage that. You know, we want to be aware that we don't want to get that, you know, really loopy, or we're even sometimes being righteous, you know, being right about our position. You know, that would certainly not serve. Now, it's interesting, in the United States, the US chart, the nodes, the lunar nodes, which is their evolutionary checkpoints, are the North Node is in Leo and the South Node is in Aquarius. So when Jupiter squares Uranus in the middle of the month, we will have, that will also be in the chart of the United States. It will be, Jupiter will be lined up with the South Node. So what we're moving away from, the evolution of our society depends on, what's coming to mind for me is to not get isolated with technology. You know, sometimes, you know how we all walk around with our, you know, our phones, like, you know, we're like this, you know, I mean, that's not good. And so that's an example of, you know, with your head in the phone. You're sitting at a dinner table, right? Nobody's talking to each other. They're all sitting on their phone. That would be an example of, you know, what not to do. And that's not how we're going to evolve, is using technology to be disconnected. The odd thing is that technology, like right now, you know, how I'm speaking to you, it has connected us in a way that we've never had before. So it's about using it wisely. And so Jupiter maybe might be, you know, we'd have to be making sure that we're not overdoing it with technology, and that we can rely on divine grace to assist us in creating intimacy and community, and having faith and optimism in our democratic society. And when I say democratic, I'm talking about little d. Okay, I'm not saying making political statements here. I'm talking about a place where everybody has a voice, no matter what voice that may be, no matter what spectrum of politics, of sexual orientation, religion, gender, you know, whatever. It's like everybody has that ability to be heard. So so Jupiter square Uranus, yeah, conjunct this USA South nodes. That should be pretty spicy meatball for for the United States. Because as Jupiter lines up with that south node, of course, it's still squaring Uranus. So we have a lot of Uranus energy. Uranus rules Aquarius, and then the planet Uranus, in that square with Jupiter, whoa, that there's definitely can be some clashes of ideas, and which ideologies to follow, and where it can get a little crazy. We don't want to be fighting and arguing and dividing ourselves. Sometimes we can get so worked up that even we might say, I'm coming in the name of freedom, but then and it's shown throughout history, that I'm thinking of the French Revolution, and then they had like the Reign of Terror and the Jacobin Revolution after the French Revolution, and it was like the people who were freeing us from the king and the queen of France, and then they ended up being tyrannical. So it's a pattern, and so we have to really be mindful, and we've never been more mindful in our world until now. The level of consciousness has been rising and rising, and we're at that point where we know how to do this. There's no having to, oh really, I didn't know. It's like, we know. And we're at such a tipping point, of that 100th monkey, so we're on that brink. And so we want to be really mindful of how we use our energies, and using it to come together. The other thing too, I want to say about the USA nodes before moving on to the other dates when this is going to be with the Saturn Uranus square, but Pholus, this is a really amazing, it's a centaur body, kind of like an asteroid or minor planet. It's Pholus, and it's at 6 degrees in the USA chart. It's right next to the south node. So when things let go in our country, they let go big time, So that's the Pholus, is that it's the archetype of, the lid, the jar on the bottle, on the genie bottle, the cork is unpopped and there's no turning back. So it's about like embracing everything really fully and deeply. And so, but again, avoiding, we want to avoid chaos and violence, and we want it to be, it's not easy when the Aquarian node would be, revolutionary. So obviously, we were revolting against King George III in the 1776, and when our country was founded. So to have Pholus conjunct the south node, I wasn't not surprised, because when they were fed up and they wrote the Declaration of Independence, it was like, yeah, thank you, we're done with you, we're done, like we're really cutting ourselves off from you. So, but again, it's fine to be like that. It's just not about being reckless or being the rebel without a cause. We have to really manage that. So anyway, yeah, so I just have my notes here. So we be aware of not, this is going to turn up the volume on polarity, or it has the ability to. So we want to make sure we're doing not polarity, not becoming so separate on the spectrum, but we want to remember, how do we reach across the table? How do we unify? Feeling almost like a moral duty to do that, a moral obligation to stay centered and be that bigger person, to serve humanity. And with that conjunction in Pholus in the USA chart, like there's no turning back. Like we have to help each other. We're in the middle of an incredibly difficult time with the pandemic and the economy, the global economy, so we really have to look out for each other. And this is what Jupiter square Uranus is calling us to do. All right, so then we, there is this revolutionary zealousness, in both Jupiter and Saturn this year, within the sign of Aquarius. So again, it's just about managing that and being smart about it. So February 17th, so right after Valentine's Day, we're going to have the first exact square with Saturn and Uranus. So they're going to be, as I said earlier, these are going to be squaring by sign all year. So it's going to be like the main event. But it will only be exact, Saturn and Uranus, right, will be exact February 17th at 7 degrees. And then June 14th, Saturn will be retrograde. So it'll be reviewing the progress it's made and its wisdom and its management of reality, and boundaries and such. That'll be in June 14th, Flag Day. Saturn retrograde at 13 degrees of Aquarius, Uranus at 13 Taurus. Then Christmas Eve of next year, about a year from now, Saturn will once more square Uranus exactly at 11 degrees. So Saturn is about, qualities of seriousness and sternness and sobriety, and there's a weightiness around Saturn, gravity. It also is about being on the outside, because it rules boundaries. Saturn was the final planet that the ancient astrologers could see visibly, without a telescope. There were no telescopes, in the ancient times. So this is the boundary of the known universe. So it's come to be associated with that. So people who are outcasts, or people who are outsiders, or boundaries, who's in, who's out, or like you could say the haves and the have-nots. So there are those qualities, that these are things that are coming up into outsiders, who, and in Aquarius, outsiders could be, ETs. We talked about that earlier, especially with the eclipse in conjunct the galactic center last month in the solar eclipse. Who's to say? Believe me, stuff is coming. But I would say too, with Saturn, and it's a push-pull conflict with Uranus. It's like, well, how much are we going to hang on to the past? Like, there's good things about the past. There are known things that work for us, and then there are things that are in our way. So there's this feeling of, people who want to stay stuck in the past, who don't want to change, who, the old ways are the good ways, and why should we, think any other way? And that's kind of conflicting. There's this feeling of like, oh, the good old days, so, keeping on, hanging on to the way things were, and which would mean keeping, yourself in a certain place and keeping others in a certain place. And so, not healthy. And in Uranus, what's Uranus? The rebel, the revolutionary, the one who wants change and dynamic change, and I want it now, and let's be idealistic. There's a utopian society for everybody if we all just work together. This is the Uranian energy. It's coming from the future. It's like I said about ETs, Uranus rules aliens and ETs. So, you could see this kind of clash between knowledge and wisdom that is, revolutionary thinking versus, the status quo. So there, and so I would say too, with Uranus is also about discovery, the unknown and discovery. So it's about managing that. So Saturn squaring Uranus can really be, if Saturn is that wise elder, it's like saying, okay, great, you want a visionary society, great. Well, let's be wise about it. Let's make some good choices that will last, and lasting, that when the changes occur, they won't fall down. They'll be rooted in a solid foundation. So that would be a good use of Saturn energy. Like, don't check your wisdom at the door. Don't be reckless and go, oh, whatever, or, it's all this, it can be so head trippy, wonderful utopia that we forget, we got bills to pay. So it's about managing that wisely. It's not about shutting down Uranus. Like, we all have to grow and evolve and change, but we want to be sensible about it. And we want to make sure that those changes will last. Will last as long as they need to, that are rooted in reality, we could say. Yeah, and Saturn's also about discipline and focus and hard work and effort. So, using our discipline and focus and hard work and a hard work ethic, and staying the course and staying stable, that you can achieve these things. So anyway, I'm thinking of like, Saturn being like an elder, like a shaman or a medicine woman or man, and, ushering in and assisting in enlightenment. And so it's a place where we find grounding, and we take responsibility. like I'm just hearing, take responsibility for the revolution, don't be reckless about it. Take it seriously, and but don't be so serious that you drag everything down. So anyway, I'm thinking about in history, when was Saturn Uranus. One of the things I looked up was there's also this, with Saturn ruling boundaries, there's also like with Uranus squaring it, it's about this, these are the times during the year, February, June, December, where there's this disregard for boundaries. That's when it's really going to be loudest. And it's like, well, those boundaries, it's good to have boundaries, but not those boundaries. Those are like toxic boundaries. Let's put in something that's more profoundly rooted in compassion, I would say, considering what we've been through. But Jupiter, Saturn, and in Pluto and Capricorn, that was all about eliminating toxic boundaries and reinventing ourselves newly with compassionate boundaries that really take into consideration our feelings and our authenticity, building a society that's based on that. But I have to say, it's interesting. One of the things I came across was in when Saturn was exactly, and Saturn and Uranus were in Aquarius and Taurus in this 1 year, in the year 1522, Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's famous wife, the one that got her head cut off, the first of the 6 wives, she was the second one, and that was the one that started the Protestant Reformation. That's when she made her debut in the English court, was when Saturn and Uranus were exactly in that, I looked it up, it was an exact square, 27 degrees, right? And so, of course, he had the roving eye, that Henry, and what did he do? He couldn't get a male heir out of Catherine of Aragon, his first wife, and he had the hots for Anne, and, there it was, ended up, divorcing and starting the Church of England. I'm not going to put up with the Vatican. I'm going to be my own church. And there it is, right? The complete disregard for the status quo and the boundaries in something shocking and revolutionary, on a Saturn square. I don't want to be held back by that. I'm going to make my own rules and my own boundaries because I said so, because I'm the king, And so, of course, that didn't work out too well, right? She ends up getting her head cut off, right? Well, Uranus and Taurus, right? There it is, decapitation, the neck. Taurus rules the neck. It's amazing, isn't it? How astrology can just point us to all these things. By the way, Richard Tarnas's book, Tarnas, Cosmos and Psyche. If you haven't read it, brilliant to see astrology through, history through the eyes of astrology. And you can really get a deeper cut. And maybe, one day in the future, my fervent desire is to have this taught everywhere like it used to be in the old days. So that would be a good use of Saturn Uranus square. Bring back this ancient astrology. This is our time, especially this year. It would be very juicy to study that. I'm doing it now, and I'm so glad I made that. I resisted it for a long time, but Uranus very strong in my chart. Shh, don't tell anyone. But I finally got off it, and I'm really glad. So yeah, this is going to be a really interesting year for astrology, with mentoring and teaching and learning, and for all of us. So anyway, so yeah, I just thought that was interesting about Anne Boleyn, because, talk about a disregard for boundaries, and then all the revolution that it caused, right? The whole split from the Catholic Church. And then, him getting so, it becoming so polarized, and then he became tyrannical in his desire for freedom. He ended up being a tyrant that killed his wife, and then all these women after him, right? He had all this 5, she was the second of 6 wives, and all the other wives, except I think the very last one, I think he died before the last one that he was trying to, off with her head, but several casualties there. Anyway, so that's what can happen when you get too crazy, right? The Saturn-Uranus square. I will say that, the Saturn-Uranus square, what we might see in the collective too, is not just this, the push me, pull you of the people who want to move forward versus staying back, which is very normal. If you look at anything throughout history, there's always that. I'm thinking too in the art movement of when the modern art movement, in the late 19th century. You know, Monet came along and Van Gogh and all of these people, Edward Manet, the Impressionism. You know, Impressionism was such a radical thing. I think to this day, they don't even allow Impressionist paintings in the Louvre because the you know, again, that Saturn status quo, it's like, oh, we don't consider that art. So they actually had to create a whole separate, what is that, the Musée d'Orsay? Any French people out there, back me up. I think it's the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. That was how houses all the because the Louvre won't, you know, the Impressionist art. So where was I going with that? Anyway, yeah, oh yes, there's always this pushback. So if you study art history, you might remember that, you know, at the end of that 19th century, early 20th century, it was called the Salon movement, and everything was painted just beautiful, you know, representational, everything in harmony and balance, kind of like in the Art Nouveau kind of vein of things. And you know, very much this beautiful rendered representation of reality, which of course was this kind of pushback from where the art movement was going. It was more and more breaking up and being more and more abstract. So you can see the clashes. So it's very normal throughout history to have that kind of clash before any big movement, or as a big movement happens, is natural. It's like law of physics, you know, you're always going to have that kind of blowback. So that's what we're kind of in a tussle with this year. There could also be earth changes too, because Uranus and Taurus, as I've shared many times in the last 2.5 years since it's been in Taurus, you know, Uranus is sudden changes and Taurus is the earth. So Saturn squaring that in the sign that is, you know, that can be that very jolting sudden movement. Yeah, we could be seeing more earthquakes and volcanic eruptions for sure. So we might get more seismic activity, you know, depending on, you know, what country you're looking at or place. You know, it's very, you know, it's certainly not literal earthquakes, and figuratively too. So like we want to look again now in our own lives, you know, what earthquakes in our lives are ready to happen. With Saturn squaring Uranus, you know, where do we desire to be free, and where are we hanging on to old past notions, and where are we, you know, we need to check ourselves. Are we getting caught up in herd mentality? You know, like, oh, I'm afraid to speak up because I need to go along with the crowd. You know, that would be like a low level of engagement. So we really want to be honest and look and see, you know, is that kind of dynamic going on for us? And where in your chart is this occurring? Where are these early degrees of Aquarius? And where's Aquarius in your chart? Where's Saturn moving through your chart? You know, like if Saturn is in your 5th house, you might be having challenges in romance or love affairs or children or pregnancies. And Uranus squaring, you know, where's Uranus in Taurus in your house? Is it, you know, which house is it causing upheaval? And new values to be examined and to let go of old beliefs. So where these are engaging in your chart, the areas of your life that are going to be undergoing this, you know, these dramatic changes. You could say seismic effects. So one thing I will say, jumping back, really interestingly enough, the royal family. This is, I know I've mentioned it before, but we ain't seen the last of it. You know, the Harry and Meghan, you know, leaving, you know, that was done right after the eclipse a year ago. Remember how that was such a big stir? We kind of forget it all because COVID, you know, dominated everything a week or so later, but part of that Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And they were like, you know, checking out, sayonara. But I find it really fascinating because the royal family will be definitely by around May. We're going to have Saturn squaring Uranus, not by degree, but it's going to start happening at end of March into April 8th. Saturn's going to be at that 11-degree point. Now I'm saying 11 degrees because remember Smiana from Serbia? I have to have her back. She was brilliant. She did this thing that it's how I met her. I read an article in the Mountain Astrologer that she published, and it was on how she discovered that the 11 degrees of the fixed axis, so Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, but especially Taurus, Scorpio, when Uranus, the 11 degree point of Taurus and Scorpio figures very largely in the karma of the royal family. And so, here it is again. Here's Uranus at the 11th, which is upheaval, right? At the 11 degrees of Taurus. So when Uranus was in Taurus in the 1930s, of course, we had Edward VIII, married Wallis Warfield Simpson, right? Remember that? And then what happened? They became exiled, right? He gave up the throne, and they were so, well, actually, he actually came out in support of Adolf Hitler. He made and he had photo ops with him as they were rising to power. Not cool, right? So what do? We got to get rid of this guy. So they sent him to Bermuda. You be governor of Bermuda. Stick him in the Western Hemisphere, out of sight. But he was basically exiled. He was also cut off. I'm watching The Crown on Netflix, and it's really good. And there was these, scenes where Edward was, Queen Mary cut him off of his allowance, right? But they got fed up with him, and they just cut him out. So he had to, create other forms of, income. And they had these magazine. They showed a scene where it was like Vogue or somebody interviewing them in their beautiful townhouse in Paris in the Bois de Boulogne, and he was, they were getting large sums of money to be photographed, So there it is, the exiled tribe, the exiled family. But now here we have it again, and then Uranus. It wasn't at the 11 degrees, but you think about. I just thought it was fascinating that Henry VIII, who had red hair, and Anne Boleyn, who was a very spirited outsider, brunette, outspoken, and then comes and they toss up the whole royal family, House of England, paradigm thing, Church of England. And so here's Meghan, American outsider, brunette, outspoken, her own woman, she's her own person. And coming along, and they're getting married in May of 2018, just when Uranus entered Taurus. I knew, their whole marriage is about just being themselves and being their authentic selves outside of the constrictions of this very, very constrictive family situation. So this is going to be playing out for them big time. Watch May, especially Uranus is going to be at that 11 degrees on May 6th to the 22nd, roughly, depending on the time zone, May 6th, 7th, 22nd, 23rd. So that will be very interesting. And then November, the eclipse, the lunar eclipse in November 19th, we're going to have a lunar eclipse. It's going to be in Taurus, 27 degrees of Taurus. That's going to be the first little blip into the Taurus Scorpio eclipse axis, which is going to start happening now. I have to say a year from now, but it'll go back into Gemini and Sag, and then in 2022 we'll start having our Taurus Scorpio eclipses. But that one little peaky eclipse on November 19th in Taurus is conjunct this Algol, which is considered a very intense, classically considered an unfortunate star, a fixed star, 26 Taurus. Well, Diana, Prince William, Harry, and Meghan, they all have degrees in various charts in their charts at 11 degrees of Taurus, and also with Algol. So Algol, it can be associated with the endings of things. It can be associated with violence. I mean, obviously, or just having to witness these things, like destructive things. And obviously at such a young age, the boys lost their mother, Princess Diana dying in the car accident. So, you can see it's very prominent in their chart, but this lunar eclipse is going to be, activating some things. And I would say perhaps that You know, there might be some further severance of Harry and Meghan. I think they've done really well for themselves, and you know, standing up to that old toxic family karma energy, which was the Capricorn Cancer Cap eclipse cycle. And now they've taken those lessons and they've moved forward. Now they're on Spotify. I just got this notice that they had this podcast. They're now doing a podcast and they're interviewing all these cool visionary people. So that's amazing use of their time and talent. And we might be seeing, I don't know, maybe, you know, Queen Elizabeth's really old, so she might, who knows if she would pass, and you know, either Charles or William would take the throne. But there's definitely going to be some kind of, you know, because there's always been a kind of royal crisis. You know, Edward VIII, same thing, 11 degrees Taurus, abdication, this and that, shaking up. So that should be interesting to watch. And it's interesting how that karmic thread runs throughout history with with the royal family. So anyway, so if any of you royal family watchers, just, you know, ears on alert. And then by the way, then June 14th, like I said, December 24th, Saturn will square Uranus again. And this time on that'll be around Christmas Eve. Saturn and Uranus will be in the exact 11-degree square. So whatever might happen or open up in May, there'll be some kind of repeat of those themes, or some working out, or a closure of some sort, or some action that has to be taken by the end of the year. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that. But anyway, what about our own transformation? You know, we have Saturn retrograde June 14th. Interesting, I know that's Donald Trump's birthday. I don't know, I just remembered that. And he has Uranus conjunct the sun. So that might be where he has to face a lot of responsibilities around, you know, there's many lawsuits that he'll have to deal with, you know, and criminal charges and criminal investigations that have been ongoing for many years. But of course, being in office, he had, I want to say, diplomatic immunity. Well, of course, now that's all gone. And so there may be this, you know, there's obviously a reckoning there for him, that, and it's a very serious and sobering thing, you know, where the law is cracking down on him. So, you know, that's that for him. But then what about us? You know, how do we use that energy? Well, Saturn retrograde is always a period of where we're checking our progress with, you know, how are we setting healthy boundaries? Are these boundaries polarizing us, or are they uniting us? You know, so that's the kind of question we'll be asking over the summer with the Saturn retrograde. And when it squares Uranus, it'll give us an opportunity to revise and reflect on the how's our foundation laying. You know, are we do we have to adjust things? Do we have to revise where our foundations are in our forward progress? What needs to change, what needs to shift, so that we can build, you know, again, Saturn always about that lasting legacy. So let's see, so, December 24th, the final one. And, you know, like I said, 11 degrees. So we have a few opportunities here, you know, where it's exactly squaring, where things we might feel conflicted. That certainly with Uranus and Taurus, you know, the need to be free, and, you know, Venus ruling that Uranus transit, you know, Venus rules Taurus. So, you know, it has to do with our connections with others. Uranus rules the internet. So obviously, you know, everybody went on Zoom in the pandemic. And so, you know, Saturn squaring that might be just another sobering level of reality that we have to deal with regarding that. And patience, you know, like patience as we do our diligence to be safe and healthy, and to not get sick with the pandemic, and to be wise, you know, and manage ourselves. You know, we might have to just tough it out a little longer. I think definitely we don't want to put any spin on this. We just have to just keep on keeping on, you know, with our hand washing and mask wearing and social distancing, and to just stay the course, you know, stay the course. So let's see, I think too, we might see, it's certainly, and I want to say, especially this month, as we get to that Jupiter-Uranus square and Saturn-Uranus square in January and February, The Venus, I think about food and in Taurus, and our value systems around food and developing innovative ways of farming. And I remember how I had on Shire, my dear friend Shire McGuire, towersforchange.org. If you're not familiar with it, definitely go to that website. She's so Uranus and Taurus, like she doesn't know that, but I had to tell her. It's cool. She loves astrology. But she's, the work she's doing, for example, many wonderful, good people like Shire that are creating positive change for good, and Towers for Change, the Tower Garden, wonderful hydroponic, aquaponic, I think it's technically wonderful. I have one in my house. I've had it for years. It's you can grow your food with 5% of the water that you would take in a normal soil garden. So it's a wonderful tool to have. They have now apartment size ones, people in small spaces. You can put it indoors, outdoors, grow lights. It's just very forward thinking. And so this is going to be a good year for delving in and breakthroughs in your own life in working with these revolutionary tools, and also with the collective, for us to embrace this more as a society. So that would be great. And the vegan movement, when Uranus was at Taurus at 6 degrees last year, we had a lot of young indigo activists I remember they were chaining themselves together in the factory farms. So I think that's going to come up again. There's been a lot of great movement around more people embracing healthy foods and compassion, compassion for looking at the value system as, oh, well, this might taste really good, this bacon cheeseburger, but, an animal suffered for that. So, wow, let's rethink this, and like, what would it be like if we had if everybody consumed food that was cruelty free? So these are the new Aquarian kind of concepts that are being embraced by more and more people. Not to be preachy here, because, again, I don't want to, sound like a, it's not about being preachy, but it's about opening and embracing and reaching across the table and being compassionate and enthusiastic about sharing these, trying on these new ideas, trying these on for size, and not being afraid to change, and getting out of our comfort zone and reevaluating what's important to us, especially with, our food supply. It's definitely going to be one area that will really shine. So let's see. I think too, with in March 18th, we have Mars is going to activate the lunar eclipse that we just had in November. It was a North Node lunar eclipse. So Mars activating that conjunct is going to be action, being movement, forward movement. Lunar can be the home and the family, and also matters of the home. So maybe hopefully there'd be a breakthrough around, like, with the eviction moratorium that's been placed on so many people. There may be, I think that one runs out in March. So it's interesting because that's when the Mars conjunction. So hopefully there'll be some kind of breakdown. There's always a breakdown, an eclipse, breakdown, breakthrough. So hopefully we'll get some kind of breakthrough, in dealing with that. April 13th, Mars will oppose the solar eclipse that just happened in December, which was at 23 degrees of Sag. So if you have a sun there or any planets at 23 degrees of Sag, look in your chart. Mars is going to be, again, it's going to be in opposition. So it's going to be asking, us to integrate, especially with ideas and beliefs, I would say, because Mars and Gemini facing off with, new ideas and moving forward and making our way in the world with new sets of ideas and ways of connecting and letting go of old ways. So, there's that's April 13th. Yay. I think that's about all I want to say for today. I think too, we might see too, I remember in the USA chart with Mars in Gemini in April, it's going to be, at that degree in March, we could see some kind of breakthrough around in the USA around the workplace. Certainly I'm thinking about AI and AI jobs, retailing, connecting, how we connect with each other in the marketplace. Is it going to be more online purchases, or how can we work with, I think of restaurants and places of where people eat and work, workers, innovation. What kind of innovation will be available to us. So yeah, because that eclipse in November was it was conjunct the Uranus in the the USA chart. So robotics and the workforce, and how much of a thing is too good a thing. I know the other day there was a, Boston Dynamics, they make those robots, the robot dogs. Well, now they've had real size robots that could walk through an office door. I saw that a couple of years ago. I saw it on in the news. Now they showed them dancing. They were like, doing like get down, and they were like doing this whole thing. There's a whole bunch of them dancing. So I guess they're just trying to get people to not be afraid of them. But I'm sorry, I'm just I still feel a little weirded out by all that stuff. So anyway, but there could be some opening or movement forward in those areas of robotics in the workplace, retailing, contracts and connections with others, neighbors. Again, this is when eclipses activate, when Mars comes along at that degree and sign. So it's coming, as we have shared before. So it's coming. Let's see. Anything else I want to say? No, I think we're good. Oh, Bitcoin. Yeah, Bitcoin. Who knows? That could really take quite a, with Uranus, it's very unpredictable. That roller coaster of a, digital currency, shifting to a digital or more of a digital currency. Several months ago, I noticed it was in Whole Foods. I saw a sign saying, oh, and I've seen them in many different supermarkets. It just said, oh, we have a coin shortage. Due to the nationwide corn shortage, will you please, I guess, pay exact dollar amounts or coins or whatever. So I'm thinking, wow, what's the coin shortage all about? All of a sudden there's the coin shortage. I have no idea why. But I immediately thought, oh yeah, there it is. And sometimes you see eclipses happening, the issues coming up months before, and it was in the fall, and that eclipse was on November 30th, so there it was. I'm like, oh, there it is, 8 degrees Gemini. You could be getting digital currency in buying and selling. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up. I think that's all for now. I hope that was useful for you guys. I know that there'll be plenty more to share. We got eclipses coming up, and we have a solar eclipse in May, right around Memorial Day weekend, and 5 degrees of Sag, a south node lunar eclipse. So then the ruler of that is Jupiter. And so there, lunar eclipses about endings. It could be with family, with mothers, home life, closing the door in the past, maybe on past routines. Routine beliefs. June 10th is a solar eclipse on the north node, and that's going to be at 19 degrees of Gemini. So again, if you have any planets, the sun, moon, or any planets at that point, you'll have an eclipse on that. And then later in the year, of course, 6 months later, we have our lunar eclipse, when I mentioned earlier, Taurus. That's on November 19th. And then December 4th, we'll have our final eclipse of the year. That'll be a total solar eclipse. So a total solar eclipse is the really cool one that you see, where it's like completely, there's no ring around. It's like you could barely see it. It's called like the diamond ring. You just see that little spark of light on one side. So the total solar is very, has more potency, has more like high octane. So that's a total new moon on major steroids. And that's at 12 degrees of Sag, December 4th. So if you have planets in that point, that's where transformation about your belief systems, letting go and a loss or decay of old belief systems would be one area which would be, coming up. So, okay, that's all for now. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful new year full of blessings, and the very, very finest, most wonderful, heartfelt experiences, knowing that we're all here for each other. I'm certainly here for you. Anything, just shoot me an email, Irlianna at StarSound Astrology. You can like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thank you for sharing these videos, liking them. It's all wonderful. And so I'm just very grateful to be here to assist everybody and sending you lots and lots of light and positivity and encouragement for the year ahead. Yeah, it's going to be a very dynamic year, and I feel like, you know, we have more agency now than ever, more awareness to make the right choices. Consciousness has risen very dramatically, and we keep on making the highest choices, and we're going to see like stellar results. So thank you. Thank you all for making those stellar results in advance. Hint, hint, make stellar results, go for them. So anyway, that's all for now. This is Irlianna Samsara, StarSound Astrology, StarSound Speaks. Thank you all for listening. Namaste. Namaste.